I'm Jamie of Pandora Astrology here in Berkeley, California, and with me is...
Hey guys, it's Julie Mikos joining in from San Francisco.
It's March of 2020, and we have a new moon happening in Aries. And so this is the moon that's closest to the equinox. It's going to have very much the feeling of springtime, of um, all of that rebirth and those new shoots of life springing forth. This particular new moon in Aries is right here. It happens at 4 degrees of Aries. And hanging out with it is Chiron. And so I'm going to circle that. And there are a couple of other things connected with this new moon, but before we get into them too deeply, Julia, I wanted to check with you because I know that you think of new moons in a particular way, having to do with beginnings anyhow, and this one being in Aries, that's kind of a double theme, right?
Yeah, they're both, Aries being the first sign of the zodiac, it has a very sort of initiating energy to it. And new moons have been compared to sort of like a germination cycle of a new plant, right when the
Yeah,
seed is beginning to blossom and sort of spurt out new growth.
yeah, exactly. Um, so this moon happens only once a year. It happens in the spring, in the early spring, as close to the early, the beginning of spring as possible. And this one's very close to that, being at 4 degrees of Aries. So it's just like so very fresh. And I think it will be very refreshing and may kind of pull us out of our winter torpor, even. Now,
Mm.
there's some harmonious connections that this moon has. And part of what's nice about this moon is that it doesn't really have stress. I mean, it does have a square to the nodes, but the nodes are not a physical point. The nodes are mathematically derived imaginary points. The nodes, for those of you who are watching and may be curious about what the moon's nodes actually are, they're not physical. They're they are the points that happen at the intersection between two imaginary planes, two plates in the sky, one of which is the ecliptic, which is the Earth's path around the sun, which from our point of view looks like the sun's path around the Earth. And then there's the moon's path around the Earth, which is another plate. And these two are not exactly the same, but they intersect. And one of the places where they intersect will always be in the southern hemisphere, and the other one will always be overhead in the northern hemisphere, and that's how we get the north and south nodes. So they're not physical, but they're measurable, and they are very interesting because they have a lot to do with the feeling of destiny.
Mm.
So having a lunation in square with these nodes would suggest that this might even feel to some people, especially if you have something in your chart, like maybe your birthday is around this moon, this might feel a little bit like, something destined.
Mm.
Um, the south node is in Capricorn, the north node is in Cancer. So there's a general path away from being Capricornian, like tough, armored, thick skinned, um, judgmental, critical, demanding, and towards Cancer, nurturing, loving, caring, soft, emotional, intuitive. And and then there's Chiron. And Julia, what are your thoughts about Chiron being involved in this new moon? It's like right there, it's within a degree of
Yeah.
this new moon.
Oh, it's therefore going to really, really integrate its message quite strongly with this new moon. Then,
Hmm.
and the Chiron is, the wounded healer is the archetype most people refer to with Chiron.
Yeah.
That it can show us where we have some very, very early ancient wounding, perhaps in our sort of upbringing, especially childhood, adolescence, and which with time we can eventually find healing and a way of sort of reintegrating it back into our character so that we can become healers to others.
Yes, exactly. Another way that I like to think of Chiron is that it has to do with hybrids and hybridization. In other words, Chiron is about a duality or a sense of being split, as if you are straddling two worlds. You have one foot in each of two worlds who just are so different from each other, maybe even inimical to each other,
Interesting.
that you feel like split. And then Chiron's purpose is to bring those things together, seal over the crack or the chasm between them, and make you whole.
Oh, wow.
So, like,
Yeah.
for example, immigrants are ruled by Chiron and immigration because of that feeling of being from one place but transplanting yourself to another, or when they take, they graft, a rose tree, a rose bush onto another rose bush, or, you can get, you can get a stone fruit tree that has branches of different kinds of fruit all grafted onto the same tree. And that's very Chiron. I think that children of immigrants are particularly Chiron because um, they have this whole world of their parents and the culture their parents came from and the language too. And then there's the world that they are living in every day and their peers at school and the language that they're speaking there.
Oh, yeah.
And so straddling that is really difficult. So Chiron has a lot to do with this hybridization thing. And and I was thinking about how Chiron in Aries seems to have a lot to do with healing anger, healing violence, healing, those situations where somebody maybe needs to assert themselves in a better way. Maybe they haven't asserted themselves and they have to assert themselves more or some. Or other situations where a person is asserting themselves too much and bringing that into balance and hopefully bringing healing.
Yeah, yeah. The Chiron, because it's both conjoined the sun and the moon, and I
Right.
think that, yeah, when I looked at a chart of this new moon, there was definitely that impression of healing one's ability to assert oneself. Maybe this cycle would be a time period where you would have to kind of look over where you haven't asserted yourself, either in your relationship or either in your workplace, and kind of have to find a new approach to that.
Yes. And find a way to, make yourself or things around you whole. Leave it whole. So,
And Chiron on the moon too, because with Chiron on the sun, it makes me think of the ability to assert the self forward. And Chiron on the moon can have some issues around nurturance. Maybe not feeling, maybe some awkwardness around nurturance, either in the giving or the receiving of it too.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Chiron contacts can be very awkward, I've noticed. Like there can be, sometimes it's like if you got a strong or a harsh aspect with Chiron and a planet, sometimes that planet expresses itself a little awkwardly.
Yeah, perhaps it feels that sense of splitness or duality. And when you get the sun and the moon together, there is a form of hybridization that is trying to go on. It's like the integration of core self with emotions. And if you are not aligned with your emotions, or you're denying your emotions or suppressing them, you don't feel whole. So this could be, and especially, I mean, this particular one happens to fall in the third house. I don't usually talk about the house structure in these videos, but it does kind of make me think that, like, this could be about speaking truth. It could be about speaking what's so, about how you feel, and getting a sense of your own wholeness and integrating how you feel with who you are, so that you can feel more real and authentic. So there's a lot of great juice to be squeezed out of this one for sure. Now there's another really nice piece of it, which is that Saturn is here in a harmonious aspect with the moon and the sun and Chiron. And also Vesta is too. And together they form a configuration that astrologers call a minor trine. If you've ever heard of a grand trine, that feels extremely harmonious and extremely smooth. And this is like that, just not quite as extreme. So Saturn and Vesta in air signs, harmoniously connecting with this lunation with Chiron. Julia, do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, it's that there's that even though a wound might be, kind of raw and opened up, there's a willingness to do work with it. There's a willingness to kind of put focus on it, roll up your sleeves, get your
Hmm.
hands dirty to kind of to really advance it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's Saturn's contribution. And by a harmonious contact, it can really do that. It can just be like, well, let's roll our sleeves and do this. We can accomplish something here. And then Vesta's theme is focus. Vesta and Saturn do so well in a trine together, I think. It is possible to take it too far and become so focused that, you're just kind of there with blinders on. But but I think that it's great. And actually, you, Julia, said it yourself when we were talking about this chart before we started this video, that that this Vesta connection here with Saturn is a great way to corral and channel all of that energy of the Aries moon, which could be all over the place. It could be explosive, but these more rational placements in air signs can contain, structure, and channel that energy in a good way, don't you think?
Oh yeah, yeah, because Aries doesn't have the most follow through of all the signs.
So true. But Saturn and Vesta can help this moon finish the job.
Definitely.
So the title that we came up with for this is Springtime is for Healing. And that's obviously the Chiron influence and the Aries influence. But I think that Saturn and Vesta definitely have some contributions to how this moon could help one heal their identity, their heart, their anger, their assertion, and to, focus and contain that powerful, sometimes volcanic anger and channel it into something good and something worthwhile. So this moon happens at 4 degrees of Aries. I like to use about a 5-degree orb for these sorts of things. So if you have anything at all in your chart within 5 degrees on either side of this moon, you're going to feel it. And I want to change these that I put here. So it basically means 29 degrees of a mutable sign, or all the way up to 9 degrees of cardinal signs. So if you have something in your chart in 0 to 9 degrees of any cardinal sign at all, and here's where they are, or if you have something at the very, very end of a mutable sign, 29 degrees of a mutable sign, and here they are, then you're going to feel this moon, and it may linger with you until the next moon comes to replace it, the way moons do. So I think that's all we have to say, right, Julia?
That sounds good to me.
Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this movie, this video, whatever the hell this is that we're doing here. And you'll find it in the March news playlist on our YouTube channel and more good stuff like it. And we'll see you around the cosmos. Bye.
Bye.